So, whatever happened to that now classic slapstick comedy meets classic Universal monsters film from 1948, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein? Let's find out. Movies, music, and monsters. Hey my friends, Dan Monroe here from Movies, Music, and Monsters. Oh boy, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Certainly one of those films that just about every kid in America watched back in the day, half covering their eyes and half laughing out loud. The Halloween season is quickly coming to a close, so for this being my last Halloween-themed video, I thought let's have some fun with this one, and I specifically remember seeing this film on the Movie for a Sunday Afternoon on Channel 29 out of Buffalo, New York in the mid-1970s. But for those of you who have never seen Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, it's essentially the story of two baggage handlers who get large crates addressed to McDougal's House of Horrors, with Costello's so-called girlfriend deciding that his simple brain would be just perfect for that of the monster, whose current brain had, according to Dracula, became, and I quote, an unmanageable brute, with the Lon Chaney Jr. character as the Wolfman hot on the trail of these crates containing Dracula and the remains of the creature, and from there all monstrous hilarity ensues. Hey, Abbott! You know, it's kind of funny, even though Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein became one of their most popular and beloved films, neither Abbott nor Costello ever dreamed that one day their comedic talents would cross over into the comedy horror genre. So, to fully understand how this incredible piece of comedic horror ever got off the launch pad, we gotta go back, way back to the 1920s. Bud Abbott came from a show business family background, originally with the circus, and later on with what was known as clean burlesque shows, dancers and comedians, obviously aimed at primarily male audiences. Abbott literally worked in burlesque for over 20 years before he met Lou Costello, Lou being bitten by the show business bug after being incredibly impressed by the work of Charlie Chaplin.
Correct. Although originally Lou Costello wanted to be a dramatic actor.
Heading out to Hollywood in 1925 and having a really hard time of it, often sleeping in parked cars just to survive, eventually finding some work in Hollywood as a studio construction worker and, if you can believe it, a stunt man. But as an actor, not so much. But then in 1936, on the burlesque circuit, Lou Costello met Bud Abbott, and the rest, as they say, is history. The perfect combination of those contrasting styles in comedy. You know, you got the smart guy, then the dumb guy, the tall, skinny guy with the shorter, heavier guy. Honestly, a throwback to all the classic Greek comedies now reborn in the mid-1930s. Yes, very similar to the comedic genius of myself and Robert over there. Me, obviously, being the brains of this comedic duo.
You're an idiot.
Then, eventually, Abbott and Costello took their talents to the airwaves on the Kate Smith Show on the radio. They hired an incredible writer named John Grant, which resulted in probably one of the greatest comedy sketches ever written. All I want to know is what's the guy's name on first base?
What's the guy's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second. Who's on first? I don't know. He's on third. We're not talking about him.
This could literally go on all day.
Let's not. It was at this point, however, that the duo became so popular that Hollywood eventually came a-callin', and it was, of course, none other than Universal Pictures and a whole slew of great Abbott and Costello films started getting cranked out at one point in 1941, making 6 films in 12 months. These guys were voted the #1 movie stars in the world in 1942 and pulling in over $1 million a year, which, believe me, was a whole heck of a lot of cash in the early 1940s. Okay, but how did these two burlesque comics get tangled up with the classic Universal monsters? Well, in 1942, while Bud and Lou were filming on a Universal soundstage, there was something else kind of interesting going on at Universal, a bit of an experiment, some might say, the pairing of 2 classic Universal monsters together in a film called Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and that gave these 2 guys an idea, not for a movie, but for a Broadway show with the 3 classic monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. These guys, coming out of a burlesque live audience past, really missed the interaction of a live audience, but their schedule in Hollywood just wouldn't allow that to happen until eventually, in 1948, the studio executives began asking themselves, okay, what's next for Abbott and Costello? The answer, the classic comedy duo meets the classic Universal monsters in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Wait a minute, they already did a comedic horror film called Hold That Ghost. Very true. In fact, Lou Costello was so good at acting scared that Universal often put frightening moments in a lot of the Abbott and Costello films just to show off this particular talent. But getting back to this film, the original screenplay was actually called The Brain of Frankenstein, which apparently was so bad that Lou Costello famously told the writers that his infant daughter could have done a better job writing it, so the script was reworked and the title was changed to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which worked perfectly because it said something both funny and scary at the same time. I can be funny and scary at the same time.
If you mean funny looking and scary stupid, you are correct, sir.
You know, one thing that I always thought was very interesting about Count Dracula was the fact that he could travel all over the world in these big wooden crates and yet emerge out of them completely rested, totally energized, and ready for action, something that I have always struggled to do when it comes to my personal sleep. I can tell you that. That is until I began my nightly regimen with this week's sponsor, Dream by Beam. My wife and I are very busy people. We both own our own businesses, constantly on the go. We rarely, if ever, stop working for even 5 minutes, so it's crucial that we both get a good night's sleep, and with Dream, it's almost completely effortless. Dream contains natural sleep ingredients, which alone are very powerful, but together make a groundbreaking nighttime blend that gently eases your body into a deep rest and then continues to work all through the night, supporting all your sleep cycles. And it's actually pretty simple. You fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, wake up refreshed. It's super easy to use. Simply put 1 scoop of powder into a mug of hot water or milk, blend it up using your Beam frother, sip it down 30 minutes before bedtime, and bingo! You're done. Dream is not only delicious, but it comes in a variety of different flavors with no dairy, no gluten, no added sugar, and only 15 to 20 calories per serving. So why wait? Get started with a better night's sleep tonight. Get exclusive early access to Beam's Black Friday sale with up to 50% off for a limited time by simply clicking the link in the description and using code Monroe at checkout. This is Beam's biggest sale of the year and the best deal I've ever shared with you guys, so don't miss out on this amazing product, and more importantly, don't miss out on getting a better night's sleep. And now, back to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It now came time to decide what monsters were going to be in the film, and more importantly, who was going to play those monsters. Boris Karloff, who had spent so much time in the Frankenstein makeup, just wasn't interested in doing that character anymore, and beyond that, he was also kind of concerned that a comedy might poke too much fun at the monster character, so he declined, and the guy who had taken over the part of the Frankenstein monster at Universal, Glenn Strange, was once again brought on board. Fun fact, even though Boris Karloff turned down the role of the monster, he did heavily promote the film for Universal.
Karloff the Uncanny did ultimately regret not reprising his Frankenstein role after seeing what a smash hit it was. That's why he went on to play Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer, which didn't enjoy as much success.
It's really interesting how Glenn Strange actually got the part of Frankenstein to begin with. Makeup artist Jack Pierce had seen him when he was playing a pirate in a film and paid Strange $25 to stay late in the studio in order to try out some makeup. The Frankenstein makeup, to be exact, and the test was so successful that Glenn Strange continued on as the Frankenstein monster from that point forward. Enter, or in this case, re-enter Bela Lugosi, who had horrified audiences as the original Universal Dracula in 1931, and it's really kind of funny. Bela Lugosi is so associated with the Dracula character that people automatically assume he played Dracula all the time in Hollywood, when, in reality, he actually only played Dracula twice, once in the original 1931 Dracula film, and then again here, 17 years later in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Now, as far as the Wolfman goes, there was only one actor ever who famously portrayed that character, Lon Chaney Jr., so there was obviously no disagreement as to who would play that part. But then something strange happened at Universal. The company was changing over from Universal Pictures to Universal International. Many of the studio executives were being replaced, along with, unfortunately, Jack Pierce, the brilliant yet somewhat problematic makeup artist responsible for so many classic Universal monsters for over 20 years, actually being fired from Universal only to be replaced by one of his own assistants, Bud Westmore. Warning! Wasn't he the guy who tried to take all the credit for creating the creature from the Black Lagoon?
Yes, Bud Westmore. Far less talented than Jack Pierce, but undoubtedly cheaper and easier to control.
Well, possibly, but more than that, the studio executives wanted someone to get the makeup done faster and cheaper, of course, to save the studio money, streaming the makeup time down from 4 to 5 hours with the old techniques to now under an hour, which was not only cheaper, but a heck of a lot more comfortable for the actors having to sit through the entire makeup process. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was directed by Charles Barton, or Charlie Barton, as he was known on set, a guy who collaborated with these two comedic geniuses in the past, which led for a wonderful filming experience. Bud and Lou could often try new things with this director that maybe a more classically trained director just wouldn't stand for, and this is really interesting. The director would use 3 cameras every time Abbott and Costello were on screen to make sure that absolutely no comedic antics were missed during production. Fun fact, things on the set during filming were actually intentionally kept very light, with a lot of clowning around and throwing pies in people's faces. They even hired a professional clown named Bobby Barber, whose job it was to just keep people in stitches in between takes. Well, that certainly didn't go over too well with Bela Lugosi. No, it didn't. In fact, at one point, Lugosi got so annoyed with the comedic antics interrupting his takes that he actually stormed off the set, feeling that he, who liked to do things in one take, shouldn't be interrupted while performing his craft.
That's only partially true. Lugosi loved all of the off-camera pie-throwing antics, but just not while he was attempting to deliver any of his lines.
This is really cool. Even though Glenn Strange was hired to play the Frankenstein monster, there was one shot in the film where Lon Chaney Jr. actually played the monster. Glenn Strange accidentally stepped on a camera cable and broke his ankle, so in just one shot where the monster throws the doctor through the window in the lab, that's actually Lon Chaney Jr. under all that makeup. Here's an interesting little tidbit. Animator Walter Lantz, the guy famously known as the creator of Woody Woodpecker, was called in to do all of the animation transitions in the film, where Dracula would turn into a bat and then from a bat back into Dracula. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein premiered in Los Angeles at the Forum Theater on June 25, 1948, and went on to become the most successful film in the Frankenstein series since the original release of Frankenstein in 1931, that is, also becoming one of Universal International's highest-grossing features of that year, earning over $2.2 million in the U.S., and this is really bizarre, but the film was initially banned in British Columbia and then only allowed to be shown in theaters after most of the scenes with the Wolfman were removed in Australia. Nearly all the scenes with all the monsters were removed, and in England, the film was released as Abbott and Costello Meet the Ghosts, not Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Okay, that's totally bizarre. What gives? I have absolutely no idea what they were thinking. What's on second? I don't know.
He's on third.
Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was not only a highly beloved entry into the comedic cinematic mastery of these two timeless performers, but more than that, has found its way into the hearts and minds of Universal Monster fans all over the world, lovingly taking its place among other great Abbott and Costello creature features, including Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer Boris Karloff, Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive all about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. And if you'd like to help support the channel, you can always buy us a coffee. Link in the description. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we together continue the conversation on movies, music, and monsters. Hey guys, real quick, according to my YouTube analytics, surprisingly, more than half of the people watching this channel are not subscribed. So, if you could do me a huge favor, please hit the subscribe button. It only takes a second, but really helps this channel grow. Thank you, my friends. You're the best. Movies, music, and monsters.